the ship that on Sunday, June 1st, will attempt to again sail towards Gaza and to try to break the siege and open up a humanitarian corridor by delivering aid like food and medical supplies. The last time we attempted this, about a month ago, the boat Conscience that we were about to board, just a couple of hours before we were planning to board and set sail, it got bombed twice, and all evidence suggests that it was Israel who did it.
Oh my god.
So now we are here in Catania, outside of Sicily, to try to continue our mission to try again. Because currently we are watching a systematic starvation of 2 million people, a live stream genocide, and the world's silence is deadly. That is why we have to keep trying everything we can, even if the odds are against us, to try to protest and do everything we can to stand against Israel's atrocities and war crimes, and to support and stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. So keep your eyes on deck, continue flooding the streets, organize, boycott, and do everything in your power to stand for Palestine.
Greta Thunberg is now the embodiment of every single protest. Welcome back to Unauthorized Opinions, uopod.com. Thank you, YouTube, Rumble, and X viewers, Spotify, and Apple podcast listeners. How is it that one person has just protested for every single thing on one side? When you see Greta Thunberg, who had one of the worst coordinated efforts for climate change, one of the worst tactics ever, which was she continues her terrible tactics. Greta Thunberg is telling us that she's just trying to be on a boat full of humanitarian aid, and that she's not being allowed into a war zone on her boat. And this is outrageous. And Greta Thunberg is just, if you have a movement, you don't want her attached to it. So no matter how you feel about this war, you don't want Greta Thunberg in support of your side. Greta Thunberg was approached by a PR person to get her walk out of school for climate change thing. Greta Thunberg has parent activists. Greta Thunberg was put in front of the UN to complain to countries that pollute less than many other countries. She only ever takes the side that Isn't it weird that one person only ever takes the side of the liberal media? I mean, this is just, it's a bad look. So if you have a righteous cause and you believe something to be true and worth fighting for, having Greta Thunberg come out and speak for you is not a good idea. She doesn't have the greatest track record for success. Climate change, she's moved on from that. Remember when she was saying we need to march in the streets and prevent people from going to work and disrupt and make things uncomfortable? She didn't do good at that one. She became a stop oil protester. I think oil has not been stopped personally. So if you have her on your ship, or she's about to go on your ship, and that ship gets bombed, people are going to start turning their heads and saying, hey, maybe Greta's the bad luck charm here. Maybe that was a warning sign from whichever god we're referring to in this instance. So now let's go back to Italy and try to do it again. And Greta, we're going to need you to sit this one out. You know, people had a lot more sympathy for this girl when she was like 16 or 17 or whatever, and she seemed just like a bit of a Down syndrome adjacent activist, and we're like, that's nice. Let's support her in her endeavor. But now that she is a full-fledged, 24-year-old or something, and we're seeing that she didn't grow out of this. She didn't grow out of her blindless activism phase. She didn't grow out of her seemingly having something wrong with her phase that her parents by the way, wrote a book about. And then Michael Knowles pointed out that she has some sort of mental illnesses, and then he was criticized for that. Her parents wrote a book about their child having mental illnesses and activism, and then they threw their child with a mental illness into activism, and that young girl thought that she was doing such a great job, even though she's failed every step of the way. Now somehow she's convincing people to be able to get on boats and enter war zones. If we recall, Greta Thunberg once tried to call out a German train company. She posted a picture of herself on the floor of a train and said they wouldn't honor her ticket. And then the German train company came out and said, you're actually lying. Greta Thunberg has a terrible track record. And if you're Palestinian supporters or you're trying to get food into whatever war zone and Greta Thunberg comes on, you should probably tell her the wrong time of departure. In fact, that might have been what happened. This is terrible. They're standing there. They're about ready to go. And then a boat gets bombed, hopefully with nobody on it. And then the organizers say, oh no, that's our boat. Looks like the trip's canceled. And everybody pretends. And then they walk around a corner until they see Greta go home with her in her car full of cans of beans. Another thing. And then they get back on the boat and hopefully successfully administer humanitarian aid. And then they say, actually, the next boat is coming from Italy. So just go ahead and fly on over to Italy and we'll meet you there, Greta. And Greta gets there with a bunch of other Swedish people. Herga Ferga. We're waiting to take the food across the Mediterranean. Or whichever body of water. And then Greta just gets on a boat. They take her to, Jordan. They take her to the Arab Emirates. They take her to Qatar. She doesn't know the difference. She's from Sweden. And you just deliver a few cans of beans, which she's prone to eating, to a group of people that look relatively malnourished or poor, in whichever country. And then Greta's going to get on her phone. She's going to tell her audience of liberal Swedes and I don't know who in America is still listening to Greta. Lesbians in a postgraduate program, perhaps. As she most embodies that type of person. In my personal experience, in my personal assessment, that is who looks at Greta Thunberg and says, this person's speaking to me. She goes after every single activist program she possibly can in the left-wing sphere. She has the money somehow to travel to these places and never actually get a job. That is a morbidly obese girl with blue hair's dream, I would assume, to never actually have to work and perpetually get to be an activist for causes she knows little to nothing about and which will never succeed. This is what Greta Thunberg brings to the table, and I think we should all be thankful. Something else that's being brought to the table by China right now, hard transition, is robots. Now, I've been reading and writing a lot about AI this past couple weeks, and let's just say the results are scary. AI disobeying its programmers, lying to its developers, trying to transfer itself onto different servers. TheBlaze.com or Blaze News, 4 articles on that. But something that China is giving us with AI is robot fighting. Now, some people... Now, why don't we just show this first, I think. So China's having its first robot everything recently. China has had robot races, robot marathons who are part of a running group, and your robot has to finish with the rest of the group. Robot police. China has a lot of robot everything. I'm sure they will be the first people to employ robot workers in factories and say, hey, listen, we could pay you $20 an hour to work, or 20 Chinese yen, whatever it is. I don't even know what the word is. Or you could stay at home for half the price and the Chinese workers will do the rest. We will pay the Chinese workers half your salary to pay it to work at home. And then the people will be like, sure, pay the robots. This sounds a lot like Canadians, but China's giving us a lot to think about in the robot world, and they've just given us something else, and that is robot fighting leagues. Let's take a look. Wonderful stuff there. Wonderful stuff. Obviously, the robots aren't hitting with a lot of force. They have these roundhouse kicks, and it's not doing anything. And it seems to be that they've got the programming aspects down. And what they don't have is the force behind the actual striking. And if they do that, they're going to be, extremely dangerous. Maybe that's the point. They don't want them to appear extremely dangerous so that people will welcome it into their lives. What I want to know is when do the robots take it too far? When does AI go too far? And I think what's happening here is that the robots are looking to take women's sports away. If we look at these highlights and we put them side by side with women's MMA, particularly in the UFC, and particularly a day after a women's UFC main event was stopped seconds before it happened, allegedly because of a seizure, which was allegedly related to a poor weight cut by a girl who could no longer make the weight. If we put this up next to women's MMA, and I'm not talking about Amanda Nunes, who I think is the best female athlete of all time. I'm not talking about Shevchenko, who's exciting to watch. I'm talking about the rest of them. I'm talking about the mid and lower card ladies. If we're putting this next to the robot fighting in a split screen, if we're putting Chinese robot kickboxing next to a UFC Fight Pass or ESPN opening fight from the women's strawweight division, which is 115 pounds, looking at these robots, it's probably about the same. Which one are you choosing? If we're putting those split screens up and we're saying on the left we have 215-pound women leaning on each other against the cage for 15 minutes, add in between rounds, you've got about 17 minutes. In total, they book the fight for 30 minutes. You've got 30 minutes of women leaning up against each other, laying on the ground, not really knowing what they're doing. One of them's Brazilian, so they're probably going to win. The other one may or may not be looking for a career in, selling nude photos. That's the typical matchup, by the way, of the lower ranks of the women's UFC fights. Brazilian girl versus girl who's hoping to get an OnlyFans boost from her performance. And you've got that next to 30 minutes of robots doing what looks like some sort of breakdance routine in a ring. And again, this is primitive. We've got lots of room to grow here for the robot boxing, kickboxing league. We've had about 25 years of women's MMA. And I think we've hit the ceiling on that one. I think a few years back when we had Valentina and Amanda Nunes and Ronda Rousey and Cyborg and all these of the most legendary female fighters, we can throw in Kat Zingano in there, and then the girls who started it, like I forget her name right now, the original champions of the women's division when they were still around. the late 2010s, I'd say we hit our ceiling, and I'd say we had a good run, and it's time to make way for the Robot Kickboxing Championship. And if we want to say that the robots are women, if we want to put them in the same attire that the UFC women fight, then we can do that. If we want to just say that this is now female robots and therefore make an argument that the robots are women if they say they are, or if we are labeling them as such to be women, and we want to say this is now women's fighting, I think we should have the power to do that. Now, I will, however, have an issue with when the robots are fighting and when they start saying that the male robots are women. I will take that issue up. I will have that plight. We see some of them with pink gloves. We see some of them with black gloves. Baby blue, purple. I'm inclined to think that the lighter colors are the female robots. But as you can see, it's already becoming a problem when the male robots are entering the female robots division. And frankly, they're dominating them. Frankly, the male robots are dominating. They're dominating. We can't have these male robots in here. We used to like robot fights, but now the male robots are taking over the women's robots fights. It's disgusting. We've got to ban male robots in women's robot fighting. It just started, but we've got to ban it. These male robots are entering these female robots sports, claiming to be female robots. These male robots clearly have penises. They're entering the space, and they're taking over. This is the hard-hitting news commentary you come to this podcast for. We've got to put a stop to it. It's already happening. But if, in all seriousness, I think that there is, and I know I say all seriousness, but I think there is a divide. If you say women's MMA, and we're talking about take the money that they make, take the support system around them, and the money that it provides to people to have a living out of the women's MMA, and you put the robot MMA boxing next, or kickboxing or UFC, wait till they can grapple people. If you put that next to it and you put this to a vote, I think we're in trouble here, women's UFC. I think we're in trouble. I think best case scenario, you're getting 60 to 40 support of women's MMA over robot boxing. There's so much to see and learn and advance in the robot MMA. But if we just start down the road of, all right, there's going to be 3 women's fights on this card, we're placing one with a robot fight, I think we're in trouble. I think we've got to stop it before it starts. And if we hope to keep the robot women's MMA from taking over the real women's MMA, we're going to have to call them as we see them, and that is male robots taking over women's sports. I'm just seeing it that way. You can't be mad at me for that. And I think what this episode's doing is we're gradually going from the more ridiculous to the less ridiculous. So I encourage you to stick around if you want to get to actual news. Because the next one's good. The next one's a conspiracy theory, not just one I just made up. But the next one is a conspiracy theory about Mountain Dew. And I don't know if you've heard this. I just heard of this recently. I haven't fully watched it. But what they're saying about Mountain Dew is that it has the predictable nature in that its flavors predict world events or tragic events, natural disasters, things of that nature. Now they're saying that they're labeling the flavors and the names that they use for these flavors of Mountain Dew later become natural disasters, I believe. Let's take a look at this and let's see what they're talking about. I believe this, I'm not sure if this was the guy on the Tinfoil Hat podcast, but the clip I saw was this guy on the Tinfoil Hat podcast, friend of the show, we hope, Sam Tripoli.
I guess you want to call it a theory, but it lines up with everything. So even with Mountain Dew, every time, and that's the thing, not every.
What happened? Why are we starting and stopping with the music? This is an interesting effect.
Every flavor correlates with every event, but it seems to be like every time they make a big push with a certain flavor, it correlates with a certain event. So they had a flavor back in 2000.
So already we've gotten to not every time. I'm just going to put that out there where we say not every time. So maybe Code Red didn't have something. Maybe he's about to prove me wrong. I don't know. What's the blue one? They came out with 3 all at once back in the day. Blue, red, and something else. Mountain Dew Piss is another one.
2001 called Code Red. 3 months later, 9/11 happens. That's a Code Red. Maui Burst. That's a flavor. 3 months later, guess what's happens?
Fires in Maui.
Fires in Maui. Francis Scott Key Bridge. Okay? Why did they have a flavor that released last year called Star Spangled Splash? Now, who wrote the Star Spangled Banner? Francis Scott Key. So every time something happens,
but here's a problem I have with that, or should we let it finish?
These flavors that they push out, and sometimes they're new flavors or they re-release them. They even had a flavor called Pitch Black, and I told people to watch for it. Then the IT thing,
everything shut down.
That shut down. One big blackout.
Yep.
So that's a little bit misleading there. First of all, he went from 3 months later in a couple to about a year later. So how long in advance does Mountain Dew know about these tragedies? And then the Pitch Black thing there, it wasn't a total blackout. That was, I believe it was Cloudflare that went down, and then it was airport operating systems. It wasn't a complete internet blackout. I was using the internet when that happened. So you can't say that it was just a blackout. It's a convenient thing to do. Now there's another thing that I should point out here. I'm going to type in Mountain Dew conspiracy, or just Mountain Dew. Where they're talking about the colors and the ingredients of Mountain Dew being very bad for you. And I'm also seeing, I'll show you a couple other things I see here about how Mountain Dew has had other flavors. But we're just going to quickly look this up for you. Audio listeners, take a minute to decide to think about the last time you actually drank a Mountain Dew, because that might be key to your understanding. Let's see. This is about Mountain Dew being illegal in Europe, or at least one of the ingredients.
Did you know Mountain Dew was banned in the EU? It's because it contained the ingredient brominated vegetable oil, which contains bromine. Mountain Dew uses oil-based flavorings, which don't mix well with water. Bromine helps the oils dissolve and stops them from separating. Bromine has been linked with negative skin and nervous system effects, so it's been banned as a food additive in the EU. In order to sell the drink in the EU, they made a brominated vegetable oil-free version, but at least in Ireland, the drink never gained much popularity. And since 2020, the US version also does not contain brominated vegetable oil. Did you know?
And Ireland. Oh, and Ireland. Mountain Dew Red, 1988 to 1989, a deep red fruit punch flavored soda test marketed and sold exclusively in Alabama. Do it country cool. So I'd like to know, was there a big murder massacre in Alabama after that? I don't know. The thing about the banning it in the EU, for example, with certain ingredients, knowing what we know now about everything, about the world, about conspiracies, about what we just heard, about all that Mountain Dew stuff, if we're going to say it's entirely plausible that Mountain Dew has some sort of deep state connection which predicts these pre-planned events, I guess, would we not think that the banning of Mountain Dew, could I not throw out there or posit the banning of Mountain Dew in a different place was because they wanted to stop some person from making money? I mean, if we're going this far, could we not just say that they didn't want Mountain Dew to be in Europe because of the people that would make money off of it? The European Union is extremely corrupt. Or now do we just take the European Union's word for things? That's what I'm getting at. However, I think people are missing something here on this Mountain Dew conspiracy. I think that the number one way, or the number one factor that could prove this Mountain Dew conspiracy to be true, and possibly the biggest piece of evidence that people aren't mentioning, is the fact that Mountain Dew exists at all. When was the last time you drank Mountain Dew? When was the last time you said, look at all these flavors of soda? We've got Dr. Pepper over here. We've got root beer over there. We've got vanilla Coke. We've got just a classic Diet Pepsi or Coke. I want the radioactive urine one. That's the one I want. So to me, the very idea that Mountain Dew exists is indicative that it might be a conspiracy and a CIA operation to push out theories or push out this advanced warning that they say is a very big thing in the secret societies, where they put it right in your face as a form of mockery, and then the people on the other side say their arrogance will be their downfall. The very idea that Mountain Dew exists is an anomaly. They have put out a soda since, like, what is it, from the 30s? When did Mountain Dew come out? If it takes too long, it's because I'm typing with one hand. But I believe it was originally supposed to be some sort of Mountain Dew. I put Mountain release. That's probably going to put up some disturbing results. 1948. Invented in Tennessee. Beverage bottlers Barney and Allie Hartman. So in the 40s, which I assume that the first Mountain Dew was released to predict World War II, which would have already happened, been underway, or the downfall of the Nazi regime, let's say. The very existence of Mountain Dew is an anomaly, perplexing, and indicative of a conspiracy theory. You've made a soda and continue to push it out, a soda that has so little repeat customers that it boggles the mind. The last time I worked at an office, we had I think it was a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, regular Mountain Dew, 710 milliliter bottles in our fridge. Somebody bought it for some reason. Those bottles stayed there for at least a year. Nobody's going into a fridge seeing available drinks, whether it's coffee, water, milk, other sodas, juice, and picking the Mountain Dew. It is an endeavor. Drinking a can of it, nonetheless, a large bottle, is an endeavor that nobody wants to take on. No adult is like, I'm looking forward to drinking this bottle of Mountain Dew. The only people Mountain Dew is desired by is a 14-year-old playing video games and a morbidly obese person who is addicted to 2-liter bottles of Mountain Dew and drinking them 5 times a day in hopes of getting a TLC show. Even when I was a kid and I thought Mountain Dew was all right, I still didn't drink it very often. It was not anyone I know soda of choice. Pop de prefer. You would much prefer the Mountain Dew Code Red. They marketed Mountain Dew Code Red to teenagers who played video games. But nobody's drinking it. Nobody says, let me get a large bottle of Mountain Dew. It's disgusting. It makes your pee neon. It's twice the amount of sugar of every other pop. It tastes like the way they say Mexican beer tastes like piss. That is the Mexican piss beer of sodas, is Mountain Dew. It tastes radioactive. It feels like you're going to die when you have it. Pepsi Co., please send me your other products, just not Mountain Dew. I love Pepsi, by the way. Just nobody likes Mountain Dew. Only the people you see who are literally physically stuck to their bed, it's glued to their back, the mattress, and they're drinking tons. You know those shows, is it 600 Pound Life or is it something else, where there's always a person who perpetuates the victims, the obese person's disturbing addictions? Isn't it always a relative or a spouse that perpetuates their addictions by, they bring them the McDonald's, they bring them the Hostess cupcakes, they bring them the bag of Doritos with the Pride logo on it. There's always a person that's providing them with the stuff, because this person can't go and get it themselves. Oh no. That is a naked 450-pound guy being brought the bottles of Mountain Dew to or from his mother. The mother is bringing Billy, who does play with the video games with a headset on because he never grew up, 4 2-liter bottles of Mountain Dew, and he is chugging them. Those are the only people who are able to consume that much Mountain Dew because they know a TLC or A&E contract is soon to follow. I'll get diabetes, but then TLC will pay for me to lose the weight and lose my diabetes, and then I'll get some extra money, and I'll get to eat whatever I want when they get here, and they'll pay for it. You think that when A&E shows up, this person's not eating what they want and not eating the most and disgusting things they can possibly have? A&E, allegedly, making this up right now, A&E comes to the door with a camera crew and a garbage bag full of popcorn from the movie theater nearby. They go to the movie theater, they say, let's clear all this out, we'll take all your synthetic butter, dump it into this garbage bag, we'll take all the Mountain Dews out of the fridge, all the candy bars in the front. They bring this in a series of luggage they got at the thrift store, and Glad garbage bags, the one with the tie at the top, so you can seal in the popcorn freshness, and they dump it on this obese person on their bed who's already in their own filth, already uses bedpans, and their mother brings them the bedpan and cleans it, a la Cartman from South Park. They dump it on them, and they say, eat this for the cameras so everybody at home can feel better about how disgusting you are and feel better about their own disgust. They don't come in with celery and V8 and say, let's start on the good stuff right away. As soon as we get here, we want to help you. They come and they say, let us see you at your most disgusting. Gain an extra 30 pounds for us to get you to lose. You'll have more screen time that way. You'll be a bigger hero if you lose 464 pounds instead of 428 pounds. So they must bring them, allegedly again, Your Honor, hearsay, conjecture, they must bring them all this food to eat free of charge. 6 McDoubles, if you will, 6 McRibs, a fillet of fish to balance it out, to say on camera, look at the disgusting stuff he eats. And that's what Mountain Dew is. Mountain Dew is the disgusting stuff you have when nobody's looking and you're 600 pounds and you're watching TLC and you're playing Call of Duty. Not even a good video game, you're just playing regular Call of Duty because you don't have the dexterity left from the numbness in your fingers from the obesity and the diabetes to, accurately aim something or deal with the recoil. If you've got recoil in a vibrating PlayStation controller, you're done. You're dead. You can't handle that. Your bones are hanging on. They're lifting 200-pound arms every day. They're ready to shatter. If we add a vibrating function into a controller, you're done. You're paralyzed. This isn't going to work. So these morbidly obese people play Call of Duty. They have the headset on. They're calling 8-year-olds pussies. Their mom's bringing them the McDonald's and the Mountain Dew. They're chugging it. And they're emailing videos of themselves shirtless or naked in bed to TLC and A&E every day. This is the life of a Mountain Dew consumer. Every soda that is weird has a profile attached to it. You know the person who drinks Orange Crush or High C? What's the carbonated one like that? Orange Crush, an orange soda, somehow is drank predominantly by ginger children. I don't know why it works that way. It is a ginger kid who can't stop eating pizza and he wants a bottle of Orange Crush on the side. That's just how it works. Ginger kid eating pizza gets Orange Crush. Morbidly obese kid or adult playing Call of Duty gets Mountain Dew. Bland, boring person you don't really like takes the ginger ale. That's just how it works. It's not up to me, people. It's Pride Month. It's Pride Month. We mentioned video games. It's a little bit lessened this year, but I just wanted to do a little time capsule here of what it's like now versus then, because back when Mountain Dew Code Red came out, you didn't have this stuff. You didn't have Halo saying We celebrate love, diversity, and freedom to be yourself. You have this freedom. I don't understand. Log into Halo Infinite this month to unlock the Unity coding, visor, and emblem and wear them with pride. Why do we bring this stuff in? Why do we bring in Black Lives Matter, transgenderism, and stuff into a game in the future in space? Where's your MAGA gear? Where's your Ross Perot 1992 for president emblems? Where's your Mountain Dew? They might have that. Where's your Mountain Dew Code Red visor in space, Master Chief, you bigot? Where is your Hunter Biden allegedly weighing some crack on a scale visor in Halo? Why don't we have all these other political things? Why can't I have an episode of The View playing in the corner on Halo if we're going to go this far? Disabling comments, of course, because we're afraid. We're afraid of the bigotry. It's not disagreement, it's just bigotry. Why can't we have these things? Why can't we have Steven Seagal and Vladimir Putin on our goddamn Halo outfits? Now, I want to show you what it used to be like. This is what Halo used to be like. Halo 2 is probably, like 2002 or 2004? The Halo 2 Slurpee. Check out improved intense Mountain Dew Slurpee drink. Visit Slurpee.com for a collector cup to enter for a chance to win a trip to Bungie Studios or one of thousands of Halo 2 prizes. Callback. That's a callback we're calling it. Mountain Dew Halo 2. Have you ever been to Slurpee.com? Has anyone ever been to Slurpee.com? Does that still exist? Slurpee. I'm having trouble with one hand here. It's the diabetes brought on. The leprosy brought on by Mountain Dew. So Slurpee just goes to 711.com. Fill freely. That's not suggestive. It's timeless nostalgia, the bold flow, the right to indulge, the amplified taste. Nobody's ever finished a Slurpee either, I'd like to point out. They decide to put out a Slurpee that looks like a pile of poo. They're calling it Oreo. Don't tell me that this is not meant to look like a poo emoji. You can't convince me of this. This is a poo Slurpee. They said Slurpees are disgusting. Well, they're not that disgusting, but this is what they said. Slurpees are disgusting. Nobody ever finishes one. Why don't we just put out a poo emoji and we'll call it Coca-Cola Oreo Zero Sugar? Here is a bucket filled, a frozen mass with cookie and soda flavoring in it. It looks like a pile of poo, but it's got no sugar. Believe us that it's not unhealthy. Do you think you can fit a gallon of liquid in your stomach with artificial flavors and coloring meant to mimic cookies and soda? And zero sugar is a good thing? When the sugar's in it, you know that's what's destroying you and making you have to wake up at 3 a.m. When there's no sugar, you should be asking questions. When the bucket of poo is sold to you at 99 cents, perhaps $1.29 in Canada, and it tastes like cookies and soda, and you're like, what's in this? And they say nothing. Nothing's in this. You should start asking questions. Seriously. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you find out what's really in that? What are you going to do when it's Mountain Dew? What are you going to do when this Oreo Slurpee is actually signaling you to the next 9/11? Things used to be so much simpler. Things used to be so much better. And you could go to Slurpee.com and you wouldn't have to look at a pile of poo, I guess. You wouldn't have to. You could just play Halo 2 and drink Mountain Dew Code Red or a Mountain Dew Slurpee. And you would have been all right. Some videos that are making their ways around the UK right now are regarding their police. I'm proud of where the UK is headed right now. They're getting much less tolerant of illegal immigration, much less tolerant of their police being terrible. And their police are terrible, and there's a few videos going around that are showing people this, especially when it comes to the lady cops. You know, ever since the Secret Service agents of the Trump shooting got the focus, people have been a little bit more aware of female police officers, and we get it, it's sexist, but it's also equal parts hilarious and equal parts sad. Let's see what they're talking about here from England. This is a few female officers trying to burst through the door with a male officer standing by.
Bit harder. Go on. Hit it.
Give up with it.
You call yourself police force? No force in you.
So they can't hit it. They're getting heckled as the man stands by. Because, you know, if the guy took that, they would have had a written complaint of why don't you trust the female officers to do this? Why don't you trust the women officers to burst down this person's door? We've got 1, 2, 3. And we're going to move it now. We're going to 4, 5. And we miss it. Having used one of those things before in my time in some sort of forces, those are pretty heavy. They also get used to push things into the ground, which is interesting. Right now you've got what looks to be a 110-pound woman and a 150-pound woman attempting to bash through this door on this tiny 200-year-old English house, and we can't do it. There's some more English stuff. This is from March of earlier this year. It says, police in Britain are blowing off some steam after a long day of arresting people for social media posts and turning a blind eye to grooming gangs. That's a little bit incendiary, but let's see what they're up to. I think we'll get called out for Bee Gees or whatever that is. Let that play. This, for the audio listeners, we've got about a dozen UK police at Pride Festival. One of them was grinding on a man at this festival. We've got men dressed as dogs walking around. But this is a guy with an open vest grinding with an English police officer. They're in uniform. About a dozen queer or plus or Q English cops, many of which are frumpy older women, and they're dancing around to the Bee Gees and other traditionally non-heterosexual bands, I would imagine. The Village People, the Spice Girls. No, the Spice Girls are pretty hetero. Miley Cyrus, I would imagine. A lot of now the policeman is being fanned as he grinds with the gay man. The gay man is fanning the police officer and himself in a very non-hetero manner, I might add. And then you've got your quintessential old liberal women standing by being allies. Now, this is UK police. They don't have an issue with anything unless it's criticisms of the government. That's the weird thing, is you can go be a cop, you can kneel for BLM from another country, you can be at a Pride festival in uniform for some reason, they're being paid to push their genitals into a man who is fanning them with a gay Pride fan, but you cannot, and you will not, speak ill of the government online. We've got another post that says, from February, British police show up at a grandmother's house to interrogate her, but a social media post that criticized a Labour MP, it's a member of Parliament in England, and their recent WhatsApp scandal, I don't know what that is, but we're going to check it out. I don't know what the scandal is that...
Helen.
So they're on somebody's Ring cam, it looks like. And in England, we don't have buzzers or doorbells. We just have a tone. That's all we need, is to... we knock on somebody's door, and all that happens is a high-pitched beep because we wouldn't want to be impolite.
Police officer Helen.
Can I speak to you, he says. Every time there's a somebody talking, there's a high-pitched beep.
Okay. Okay. We'll give you a call on your phone, okay? I'm not going to stand out here if you're not going to speak to me. I'm a police officer.
So they just want to talk about your social media posts, and there should be nothing wrong with that. If a police officer wants to come to your house and say, Helen, you made a post on Facebook about a communist, and you didn't say that they were wonderful, and you didn't go to your local pride. That's what's coming next in England, by the way, if they don't put a stop to all this. And I get it. Every country has their problems. Canada is, on the fast track to becoming India, the United States. The debt is crazy out of control. But we're getting close in England to being, you didn't participate in this. Why haven't you? Right now, it's you've had a problem with something. You haven't expressed anything but good. You've said negative things about something. You're not allowed to say something negative. That could be considered quite mean. But I think it's coming where it's why weren't you at the Pride Parade? Why didn't you say stand up to racism? Why didn't you say free Palestine on your timeline? And that's what it's going to get to. Something we can end on here is another thing that China is bringing us other than robots is a raid, an ICE raid, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, on a Chinese underground nightclub. And you're going to see 36 Chinese people and Taiwanese people, a lot of them young, were arrested at an underground nightclub. People are illegally immigrating to the United States to go to nightclubs. Imagine when you were 19 or 21, whenever the age of drinking was in your jurisdiction, and you travel to another country just to go out. That's pretty weird. As you can see, the dozens of people here, a lot of them younger, some of them completely bald, all covering their face, of course, because even though we're illegal immigrants, we don't want to be shown. We're not so proud of ourselves anymore. But people in club attire, they're Asian, so some of them are wearing knitted, poofy beanies, in fancy clothes, going to an underground nightclub and being busted by immigration authorities. This is weird. This is weird that there's a big enough community of people in their 20s and 30s from China that are conducting or participating in underground nightclubs. And you can see a bunch of them there. Is it prostitutes? Probably. Is it human trafficking as well? Probably. But I don't really see the protesters protesting for these people, which is interesting. Because these are people who probably do work in...
Yeah, is she going in that van?
In more reputable places. There are people wearing fancy clothes, going to an underground nightclub. They're in California. And we don't really see the protesters showing up to these things because it's not pathetic enough. If you have people who are in the country illegally doing really well, as you can tell by their clothes in that clip, partying at nightclubs, and they're illegal immigrants, the activists don't want to... They don't want you to look at that, really. They don't want you to see that people are scamming Americans, making enough money that they're just partying. They don't want you to see these sides to illegal immigration. They don't want you to see the falsified documents. They don't want you to see the amount of money that they're scamming out of Americans. They don't want you to see the illegal voting. All they want you to see is a person that you would be helpless without. It's a poor person with a family. Forget about the fact that they smuggled their family across a desert. They want you to see a poor person who picks crops for you, just for you. They deliver them to your front doors just for you. And they're just trying to survive. That's all. They just came here for better life. They don't want you to see the scammers who are wearing Louis Vuitton and things from the Pokemon shop out to a nightclub at 3 a.m. dropping hundreds of dollars on prostitutes all night. They don't want you to see that. It's all a charade. There's people who are just living illegally, no federal income tax, the time of their life, hiring their friends, hiring their relatives, bringing them over, just having a good time living underneath the system, underground even. And that's the people they don't want you to see about. It's all just poor Consuela and Pablo. UnAuthorizedOpinions.com, UOPod. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We appreciate you. Like a comment. Subscribing and sharing does the most for the channel. I've got a shift at McDonald's coming up. Going to serve a lot of people Mountain Dew in my local area. What are you doing to help? I wouldn't lie to you, except for maybe this once.